interested in thinking about, so if we have schools that are like, hey, I want to talk about, we've talked in the past about one student doing this being embedded like in orientation or in your first year program, counseling centers being able to use this like as a small group. I think there's so many applications to this piece. And I think it's a great precursor to other content that you are trying to deliver. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Cap and Gown. I'm Rachel Phillips-Buck, VP for Student Success at Ferris Resources. I am joined today by our president, Matt Boisvert. Hey, Matt.
Hello, Rachel.
I don't know if I told you this. I'm sure that I have, but sometimes I go to sleep listening to podcasts, and the other night, my podcast just kept going through all of the ones in the library while I was sleeping because I forgot to set it to turn on. And then this music for this podcast came on, and I woke up out of a dead sleep. And I was like, what are we doing?
Is it time? I'm on already?
Okay, who's our guest? What are we talking about? So I really like that music, but it is like, does call me to action, when I experience it. Okay, we have a great guest today. I'm super excited about Suzette Parker. She's going to talk to us about how we can kind of guide our students into an experience of less anxiety, less depression, kind of taking hold of just everything that's going on for them, because we know that this is a generation that really is struggling with that. So it's going to be super fun. And I'm going to let you do the introduction to her after State of the Union, because you have known her forever. So we'll kind of delve into that a little bit. But there are a couple things I want to say. First of all, I just saw Hardin-Simmons is up in retention and persistence and has one of their biggest on-campus classes. So that's super exciting.
That was fun to see.
Also, you and I just came back from Knoxville for the ACA and got to see a bunch of our clients and spend a lot of time with them. And it's just always so good to be with our schools and hear about the great work that they're doing and the things that are happening on their campus. So that was really fun. We had some good food in Knoxville, got to spend time with Callie. So that was awesome. I don't think either you or I want to talk about football. Do you have anything to say about it?
Nope.
Okay. And
well, what I have to say about it is the Dallas Cowboys have relieved me of caring another.
You're just so beaten down now. Yeah, you're like, whatever.
Oh yeah, I mean, look. Of course, there's this little side part of my brain that's like, it's my optimistic brain that thinks, they'll figure it out. But look,
you're
they're not going to
defeated.
figure it out. They're stuck.
Okay. And the last thing I want to say, so do you want to talk about 100,000, the number 100,000? Do you want to talk about that now?
Sure.
Okay.
So this is really exciting because today I have great confidence that today is the day that, since we've been tracking, we will have had our 100,000th user over the lifetime of Ferris 360. And Rachel, that's just kind of amazing. That goes back, think about all these years. And as I was looking at it, it's like, well, we know user number one is you. And what's fun about that is you were using it while you were helping launch Ferris into existence. And so you were the first user, and obviously what that means and how you've really built a platform as a practitioner for practitioners. But the other fun thing is the number one non-Ferris user is Faustina from Missouri Southern State, and Faustina is still a user today, and a great friend and partner, and just loves serving their community there.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy town when you think about how much turnover there is in higher education. Our first client is still our client, and our first user is still a user for us. And Matt, I just want to clarify, right? That's not like visits. That's because visits, we have way more than that. That's like literally the number of people who have used it, right?
Oh, yeah. So that's a great point, because Faustina's used it almost or over 5,000 logins into the system.
Yeah.
Which amazing. Is incredible. And the way I think about it, these stats are a little old, I think.
Oh.
But I think we're six users away, Z.
Really?
Maybe I'm wrong. You have to refresh your page.
Exciting.
But I think we're 6 away. But what's really neat is I was just thinking about, we always talk about the transformative power of higher education. And the reason why we do this is you can change one student's entire family tree. And I just think if each one of those 100,000 have changed the life of one student, we have impacted, right? So
yeah,
100,000 students' lives have been changed. Suzette's already in. She's like,
yes.
Well, if each one of our users has changed one student's life, then that's 100,000 students. But
more likely it's more than that, right?
My guess is it's more like 10.
Yeah, like if only our practitioners only had one student that they were working with, but that's not usually the case. Usually it's quite a big caseload, so it's pretty exciting.
100,000 users of our platform is, when I woke up today and I knew I had great confidence because I get a daily notification of how many new users have signed in and started using it. And when I knew we were close, and I just thought, when we started this thing, that was a number it was never on my register as like, oh, that'll be a milestone.
Yeah.
But here we are. So,
yep, super exciting. So perhaps by the time we finish today, we'll be at 100,000, but if not, for sure, sometime today. So thank you guys for all of your work for student success. That's what it represents to us, is just all of the work that's being done on campuses across the United States. So thank you for that. Okay, that brings us, I think, to, Z just chatted to us. She had a filter on. All users right now are 100,007.
But what she's pointing out is there are some testing users. So what she's pointing out is she's right.
She's right. Yeah, which is usually the case when we're talking about that. Okay, well, that brings us to the State of the Union. What
is the State of the Union, Rachel?
Well, I don't really want to talk about the State of the Union, but I'm going to tell you some stuff that's happening in our schools, okay? So first of all, we talked about enrollment, record enrollment. So all of the census numbers are coming in. Like, we're just on the cusp of our schools saying, like, here's what our final retention numbers are. There's always kind of some trepidation around what those numbers are going to look like, because it can make a big difference in your budget for your campus. But I want to do a shout out to 2 schools that have record enrollment for their fall. The first one is Stephen F. Austin, which Callie Menard she's a alumna of that. So very excited for them. They have 2,800 first-year students this year, an increase of more than 31% from last year's incoming class. So that's remarkable. They just joined the UT system, so the University of Texas system. So that has given them like some grants and those sorts of things that have really helped them with those numbers. So that's very exciting. And then one of our clients, which you and Shauna and I were just there this summer, George Fox, who's in Newberg, Oregon, but also has a campus in Portland. They have record enrollment, 4,350 students. This is the second time that they have broken their record last year and this year, which is really remarkable. They talked a lot about like how they're investing in beautiful spaces, which we can attest to. This is a bridge that they built to kind of connect 2 parts of their campus. They have a brand new dining hall. They have a brand new chapel on their campus. They are now starting an investment in all of their residence life halls and getting those up to speed. They have new Division III sports, a whole bunch of them, which, do you know, I've never heard of this before. So they have esports, but they also have stunts, which is a competitive kind of cheerleading. So they have a team of stunts. And then also doubling down on things like nursing, engineering, and business programs. So really exciting to see schools that have just been really successful.
They have a great engineering program, and our friend Brian Dawson's son went to George Fox. My son's an engineering minded, but Brian's son just had an incredible experience at George Fox, mentoring, and now actually works on nuclear submarines in Washington State.
Nice.
But the other thing I was going to say about George Fox is I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and I actually went to a camp in Newberg, Oregon, and never knew about George Fox. I think at the time they were like 500, 600 students.
Wow.
Suzette might be able to help me out with that, but just significant growth because I think they leaned into who they are.
Yeah.
And what we know about them is they are good.
We know them and they're amazing. In fact, Shara was just on with me last season talking about all of the work that she's done. So super incredible. Okay. The next thing I want to tell you about is SACS, which for some of our schools, that's their accrediting body. They have a new president. You just went and spent time with them. They are really taking seriously this idea that they're going to re-examine what they're doing with accreditation. So their statement is basically, hey, we have a bunch of different tenets or foundations that we use. And this is the time for us to go back and revisit all of them, notably the QEP, which if you have worked on your accreditation in the last 15 years, you have to identify your QEP, and then you've got to show how you're going to do whatever you said you were going to do. Basically, SACS is hey, some people really hate it. They feel like it's busy work. It's a hardship, especially for small schools, because you have people who are doing their work, plus now they're in charge of the QEP. And sometimes it doesn't achieve the actual purpose. So they are giving temporary relief to all campuses. Basically all institutions are going to be held harmless from QEP participation during the study period, which is 14 to 18 months from now. And they're going to do a comprehensive review and study to see how they can change that so that it's a better fit for all of the schools, which I really appreciate, Matt. You and I like when something isn't feeling right or isn't feeling efficient or effective to just be can we just time out for a second? Let's take some time. Let's think about it. Let's assess it and then make it better. So I love that. Yeah. And at ACA, we had a bunch of schools that were this is going to be really helpful. We're going to have a little breathing time in the middle of our process. So interesting. Okay. The other thing that I want to talk about is you and I talked last time we were together about FTL zeros. So students who are transferring no credits into college and how that's a high at-risk population. There's a great article in Inside Higher Ed about why taking those college courses, what is the impact on students? So kind of the reverse of what we usually talk about. This says over the past 3 years, the number of high school students taking college courses has increased more than 20%, which is really remarkable. A majority of those that take those AP courses are seniors, about 76%. The rest of them are juniors. Most high schoolers took only 1 or 2 college classes, and 19% were enrolled in 4 or more. So that's pretty amazing, right? That's a very thin tip of all of those students. The primary reason that they're enrolling in those is they want to get ahead on college credit and reduce tuition costs, which we know it does both of those things. 3 in 5 students said they strongly agree with the statement, my dual enrollment experience is preparing me for college. And then over half of dual enrollment students said the experience made them more motivated to attend college, but 6% of students said that the experience was a turnoff that made them less likely to go to college, which you and I were talking about. Really interesting. One of 2 things is happening there, right? Either college is not for them and they did this experience and they're I'm not even going to go. I'm going to pick something else, which super helpful.
For sure.
But also, sometimes I feel colleges, if you have a bridge program, you better do it really well, because it is the first taste for students about what it's like to be in college. And there is the possibility that they would say, this is terrible and I never want to do this again, right? Even if it would be a good fit, if it's not done well.
Yeah, for sure. You would hope that you would have a star faculty member leading that.
Yeah.
But But yeah, I mean, so you want to be in control of your delivering an excellent experience for the students. But I really, if for some of that 6%, if they're like, if that's the standard, I'd rather go work with my hands, right?
Yeah.
Or so I think there's some good in that. But it definitely, just today we were running a Spark report. Viva and I were talking over a client where for the most part their students are high achievers, retain at a high rate, but if they came in without transfer dual credit or AP credit, they retained it 20% lower than the other population, than those who had the credits. And that is huge. It's why we keep pushing forward the bridge program, but also it's an early indicator of this is a student who needs extra encouragement and support. So
Yeah, for sure.
I think actually this kind of ties into some of the anxiety and the fear that might be in a student's mind as they start college for the first time and they have no experience, that Suzette's going to talk to us about today.
Yeah. I also want to bring to your attention a new book for admissions leaders. It is called The Hottest Seat on Campus. So this is written by Angel Perez, who's a longtime admissions dean, and now he's the CEO of the National Association for College Admission Counseling. We know that as NACAP. So he wrote this book basically just to talk about how you can be a good admissions dean. Not so much for admissions counselors, but more thinking like the leadership piece of that. There was a great interview with him where he talked all about his experience and why admissions is so important. He talked about how NACAP has launched a program called Next, where they work specifically with admissions counselors who are 1 to 3 years in to the job. Because Matt, a lot of times admissions counselors have kind of come through, like maybe they were a student leader, they were in Res Life, and then they became an admissions counselor. But maybe they don't, after 1 to 3 years, they don't have a vision for then how that continues to grow. And so this program helps them understand what growth could look like for them, gives them mentors. They also are kind of piloting a program for campus guides. So the tour guides who are taking people around to be like, hey, this is what it looks like to be in admissions. Is that something you'd want to do? Which you and I just had the joy of being on a campus tour with at one of our schools, which we talked a little bit about, but it's just so much fun to see students' reflections of their experience on a campus.
Well, our late friend Tim Fuller always called it, the $1 million walk. And and when you think about this moment of truth experience of a tour that you have put in the hands of, in some cases, a 19-year-old.
Right. Like, what are they going to say?
Around. Yeah. I mean, it's a huge moment of truth experience. And so I love that Angel's really helping in developing a program for that. It's one
of the things he talked about is that admissions deans are chief storytellers at an institution. Right. And just this idea that you have this huge constituency, right? So you're talking to students, you're talking to parents, you're talking to high school counselors, you're talking to the media, like all of these people, and you're trying to weave together this story that is going to help them understand why they should send their students there or come there, or why you should invest in the school. It's really remarkable to think about it that way. I love that.
Well, when you think about the promise triangle that I always talk about, at the very top is the institution's promise made to the student and the families. And that happens on that tour, right? And sure. I mean, we saw that we saw that break down at the cafeteria at one of our schools.
I mean, right. they were trying to tell a good story, but it was like, but for real. So I will be interested to read that book. I think one of the things he says is like, enjoy being an admissions counselor, because that's like, you're talking to parents and you're traveling and you're going to high schools and you're doing that sort of thing. But then the higher up you get in that hierarchy, it gets muddier and it gets more stressful and there's more pressure. And so there's something just really pure about being the storyteller for the people that you're engaging with. So I look forward to reading that book. Okay, I have a couple more for you. I'm not going to delve into this too much, but there was an article in University Business called Staff Burnout from Technology Can Be Avoided. I want to bring this to our attention just because I'm thinking specifically around AI. And, you and I were talking to one of our good friends and one of our sort of foundational people at Ferris, Dwayne Towell. And he was saying this idea of AI is very similar to what we experienced 20 years ago with iPads, where it was like going to change everything and everything was going to be different. And we were going to have to classrooms were never going to be the same and all of that kind of stuff. And there's a period of time where you're adopting new technology and it feels like it's going to change everything. And then people kind of get used to it and then it changes some things, but it's not necessarily revolutionary. And this article is about how so often we say, you have to start using this technology and change everything to fit it. But we don't provide the kind of institutional support that our faculty, that our staff need in order to do that really well, right? So this idea of inadequate training around how should I use AI? I don't have resources. I don't understand how it fits with our strategic vision. There are a lot of things that if you have a whole plan for how you're going to use any sort of technology, you can alleviate some of that burden that then leads to burnout. Because, you and I know from the work we do with schools, there's work. And then when you have to learn a new technology, it can be harder in the beginning if you don't have good institutional support and don't feel like there's someone you can ask about it, right?
This is where I think about, why we invest in supporting our clients the way that we do.
Yeah.
And so our boot camp and the kinds of resources and the real people that you can talk to, namely Rebecca, is because as you're trying to learn our technology, we craft it so that it's, easy to use for a practitioner, right? Designed by and for practitioners. But also there is this learning curve, especially if you're either going away from emails and Excel spreadsheets to us, or if you're moving from, I don't know, some legacy, you needed to know SHA term and Safari eggs and some crazy codes. And you're looking at our thing and you're like, you mean I can just type the student's name right here and get everything I want?
Yeah. But there is that piece of running alongside your bicycle, right? The hardest part is stopping, getting on your bike so you can go faster.
That's right.
So,
well, that was the analogy I wanted to start with.
I hate it so much, but I can't think of a better one. So I don't know what to do about it.
I think it's the right one. I know that if I take the time to jump on this bicycle, I can move a lot faster, but I am just overwhelmed and I'm just going to run with it alongside you.
I don't have time to stop right now. So for sure. All right. An article that I would recommend that everybody reads is coming out of an IU sort of faculty learning consortium.
And that would be
Indiana University. It's called From Zoning Out to Zooming In, Strategies to Reclaim Attention in the Classroom. And there's two concepts here that I want to point out. The first one is they talk about the concept of the attention economy, which is this idea that we just have so many demands for our attention. You think about social media, you think about other, things that you're distracted by. And our attention really has become a scarce and really valuable commodity that we have to help students protect. In the words of Taylor Swift, do you know this quote? She said, think of your energy or attention as if it's expensive, as if it's a luxury item. Not everyone can afford it. Not everyone has invested it in you in order to be able to have the capital for you to care about whatever the thing is. So that's helpful. Thanks, Taylor. But this idea, right, that we have a limited amount and you've got to be careful how you give that out, which I think is really, really helpful. And then go ahead.
No, that's exactly right. It came from Taylor, so it must be true. But really, if you think about that, and not everyone really values your energy. That's what I would say. Is of course you would want to be able to help everybody, and you have a lot to give, but not everyone actually values it. And so,
yeah, for sure. But I do think thinking of the attention and the energy as a depletable resource, right? And so then if you only have so much, do you want to pay attention to your kids, or do you want to be on Instagram? Do you want to study, or do you want to be watching TikTok? I think it's a really helpful way to kind of make sense of that. And that article has a lot of really practical applications for how in the classroom you can kind of take back your students' attention and give them good reasons for paying attention instead of kind of having fractured attention. So I'd recommend you read that. Okay, the last one I have is this idea, Matt. I feel like you and Braden did this back in the day. And I know you love how when we talk about things and you're like, I did that 20 years ago, sorry. But this is about having part-time job fairs. So basically they're saying, you know, there are all of these students, a lot of students have to work, the majority of them, 67%. Among working students, 43% were employed at least 40 hours a week, and 25% held more than one job. So we're just saying, like, it is just a fact that most of our students have to work. And it's hard sometimes to get jobs when you're a student because you want to have off for Thanksgiving break and you want to have off for Christmas break and you have like weird classroom schedules and all of that kind of stuff. So this is about colleges holding a part-time job fair where not only are they doing work study jobs where students can come and apply there, but they have employers in the community who understand all of the things that would make it so that a college student would be able to work for them, right? And so just like a typical job fair, you would have that where they could come and apply for jobs, which I love. I think is super helpful. But they also talked about things like reverse career fairs where you have your students, you kind of coach them on their personal brand and you have them in a room and you have employers come and talk to students so they can get used to kind of the introduction and interview process. Specific example, specific industry specific job fairs, which I know you guys did. All of those things where we can just say, how can we help you, not just after you graduate, but in this process of you're going to have to work, let's find helpful and cooperative employers to come to campus to hire you. So cool.
So I want to talk about it in terms of a holistic, if you think about your campus, if you're in charge of the career fair. So there's this connection that I wish I had made back in the day. But yeah, Braden and I, we learned a lot about the students who came. And one thing that you should know is a student who has to work off campus is a higher risk at student. And so sure. If a student is coming to a part-time job fair, and so what you said about 25% are going to work more than one job.
Yeah.
I mean, right there, that connection. So if the Career Center is helping and gets to know these students, there's a huge opportunity to connect that with student success to say, hey, this is a student who I'm a little extra concerned about because they need 2 jobs or they need to work 30 hours a week, right? They're looking at opportunities off campus because they can't find anything on campus. Like all of these things come together to identify a population of students who just need more support.
Yeah, we were just talking to somebody who was like, we coach our students on how to talk to their employers and how to say like, no, I can't work that time, or no, that's not going to work for me. Right. So there's just a lot to say about that. But I think I love the idea of a part-time job fair. Okay. That is the State of the Union that I want to talk about. So did you have more? I've already called that segment closed. You can't say anything else about it. Okay. So I want to introduce our guest, and I'm going to give the formal introduction, and then I'm going to ask you to add color commentary to my introduction. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks. You kind of worried me at the beginning when you're like, "Hey, you're going to do the intro," and I was like, "Oh,
I'll be formal. You can be off the cuff. Okay. So you're going to see Suzette Parker on the screen in just a minute. First, she knows what it's like to struggle with anxiety and depression and how transformative it can be when you find solutions that really work. She's a life coach and brain health professional, and her favorite people to work with are young adults, helping them move from feeling overwhelmed to genuinely confident about their futures. You see now why we wanted to have her on. While she's new to working with colleges, she's been in the trenches with students for a very long time. She has a really interesting approach. She talks a lot about heart-brain connections, which I'm going to ask her quite a bit about. And she has a great course, which is called UNAFRAID, where she's helping students survive college, but also thrive through that experience. So she has this philosophy of like, hey, students, you're in the driver's seat. Transformation is possible if you're willing to do the consistent work. So that's super fun to think about, just all of those experiences that she's woven together in this course that I want to talk about. What is your color commentary on that, sir?
Well, okay. Are we going to bring her on? Because
there she is. Hello. Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, Suzette, it's great to have you join us today on Cap and Gown. And so, Rachel, I've known Suzette since I was 13 years old, which, I mean, you know, when you think about, we were both so young, Suzette. So,
I know.
But I
look exactly the same, though, right?
The same, yeah. What I have to say is Suzette's always been, I mean, what in this intro bio that you describe, I mean, she's always poured into the lives of young people. And she's really taken time. What I would say about Suzette is she is one of those who wants to get to know individuals, not like the group. She's not like a big in the group. She's I want to get to know that person. And so I've been able to see that pretty much my whole life. And there was you don't know this, Suzette, but there was a time about 3 years ago where Suzette was talking about this course and this holy living and her approach and what she's learned. And I was at a place where I'm like, like as an executive coach, do I call Suzette and say, hey, I need help? Because I think it really it's not just young people who benefit, but really just taking time to understand this connection between your heart and your brain and how to settle down, which Suzette, you've known me a long time. It's hard for me to settle down, right? But there's so many good points in what you put together here. And so to be able to have you on today and to be able to talk through it, my hope is and just as we were backstage talking, when I think about the students who can be impacted, and when I think about all of the things that are happening, I think about my senior in college, and I think about my sophomore in college, and the things that they're experiencing, and how valuable these lessons are for kids who I think are great. Like they're
very well adjusted. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, but what it can mean for them as they're hitting these points of transition in their lives. So Aiden and I had lunch yesterday and just talking about, what's next for him. And so, and then the other thing is that Ella had a professor who actually said, if you can't do it bravely, do it afraid. Mm-hmm. And that really resonated with her, like lean into, because it's worth doing. And when she said that, so we were in Colorado on the stream, and it was like, that is Suzette's kind of message, like learn how to settle yourself so that you can do these things that and be more successful because you know who you are, you have a better understanding of how to settle down. So that's I guess how I would introduce this and why I'm super excited to have you on so that we can talk through it.
Wow. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that you said all of that. That's really kind. And I will say some of my successful students who have actually communicated with me since the course have been older people older than me that have taken it and been, wow, these takeaways have changed my life, my view on life. For sure. And how I operate day to day. So, but I love it when students, when they're young and they get all the tools before.
They just have longer to use them, right? You're like, we set you up for a whole life of success because you got these early. So I want to talk about college years. It seems like, and you and I have talked about this before, like they're just really full of stress and pressure and anxiety in a way that maybe they weren't before when we were in school. And so I'm curious for you, do you have some insight into what do you think has changed either in the environment or for these students?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say I absolutely love what Ferris does in identifying the students who might otherwise fall through the cracks, because those are the ones who need this most.
Yeah.
And your retention intelligence is outstanding. It's amazing. So, but yeah, we have a huge opportunity to be proactive. So whether it is students falling through the cracks, or students, if we can get them like in the onboarding process or whatever, we can integrate these concepts and these life skills and strategies right from the beginning. So when we think about like what was and what is now, I think we have to first acknowledge there has always been a lot of stress for students going off to college.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are coming from another state or another country coming in. And so there was always this anxiety about it's all new, and the academic pressures. And there was a lot of things and just transition in general is, it's one of the top things for, what do you call it, Rachel? You're the psychologist here.
Well, I mean, like most stressful things, right?
Yeah, right. The 5 most stressful things. It's one of them. There's a name I'm looking for. But yeah. So I think that a lot of the reasons that it's harder now is there's just a lot more expectation. And whether it's real expectation or false expectation, you think about these kids that need to come in prepared, the ones who are underprepared, don't have the AP credits or any college credits. If the parents didn't get the memo, if the kid didn't get the memo, then they do come that way. And so there's a lot of them. Well, back in my day, that wasn't really a thing. Most of us, there were some people. I mean, I had an older brother that did college in 3 years because he clept out of, a whole year of school. But like, he was an abnormal person. I mean, he was a great guy, but very abnormal as far as being really on top of things. I mean, none of my friends did that. And I was the majority, so now it's expected. And kids will fall through the cracks if they don't have that. I think there's other things, of course, we all know that the online exposure really hinders them, because they don't know, even though they know in their heads that it's just like false news, half of it. But in their hearts and in their emotional state, they don't know what to believe. And so there's this anxiety that's just ever present. I think that
Suzette, I want to just camp out there for just 1 second, because I think the way you said that is so helpful for practitioners to hear, which you'll talk about this in a minute, but this idea that we can say that I will say to my daughter until I'm blue in the face, that is not real. Right? That is made up. That is second in time. And she would be able to say that to someone.
Sure.
Yeah, that's not real. We know, right? But the way it affects this other part of your brain, which is how you feel about it,
right,
how you feel about yourself compared to that, where you think you stack up, even if you can articulate, I know it's not real, it affects your heart and your feelings in a way that you maybe would be surprised at, even though you know it's fake, right? It's just, I think what makes it so insidious is that you can't talk students out of that.
Right.
You have to figure out a different way to approach it. I think it's
so Rachel, this is where when we talk about danger to daring and the amygdala, and the issue is, so the way I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine, and then I was talking to Aiden about it, in the threat of being seen as out, right? So foundationally, what you've set up, Suzette, is like we have these expectations, and even if at home we're being told like this is what's true about you and all, but then you're looking out here and you're seeing all of these other things, and there's this expectations that are being set up, or expectations of what you should talk about or believe, or right, and it's a threat of if I don't listen to that, then there's a chance that I could be outed from my group, right?
Right. Yes. And helping them to filter through that in a way that is helpful is just something that it's a skill they have to learn. and to be able to just suppress the, what isn't real, and to put that aside and to say, okay, I'm not going to, when I say suppress, I mean, like, focus on the positive, focus on the good thing, because when you can focus on something, you're going to get more of it. I mean, that's a common thing people always say, but it's so true.
Yeah.
And if they can focus on what is real, what is right, and let go of the other things, then it changes their lives.
For sure. It's funny because
Mm-hmm.
you have talked a lot. Matt said holy living, which I want to be clear is not like holy living, but like whole living, right?
Mm-hmm.
The idea that it's like you have all of these different parts of you that I don't know where students would hear how interconnected they are. Like, I don't know where that would come out in their experience. Can you talk a little bit about this idea of like holistic students, and how all of those things are interconnected?
Yeah. So mind, body, spirit, we can't separate them. They are, it's us. It's who we are. We're just, and we are affected when we're feeling disconnected. That's kind of a spiritual thing. It's a emotional thing. And so that's terrible. When we're in our physical body, if we have chronic illness, if we're exhausted all the time, which that's typical, right? If just it's all the things being in sync. And when we can be in sync, and that's something that we talk about, incoherence is what it's called, then our life then flows at this, instead of this pace of being like this, it's more this like ebbs and flows, which we all have ebbs and flows. And that literally can be seen on like a neurofeedback monitor. And what I'm talking about here is the heart rhythms. So by learning to change our heart rhythms, then we actually get our body and all of the systems within our body in sync, which helps us to be in sync spiritually and emotionally and physically all together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's so important to talk about, because I don't know that we talk about that enough. I think we know sort of anecdotally, if you're stressed out and you go for a run, that helps you, which is interesting, right? Because that's about your physical body being connected to your anxiety. Or if you're not sleeping enough, then you can't concentrate. And that's about your brain, in sleep and in concentration, and how those things are connected. But I don't think it's something that we talk enough about, how investing in one part then gives you these dividends in these other areas.
Oh, yes, that is so true. That is so true. Anytime you make one thing better, it affects all the things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So a lot of times people will say, just focus on your positives. And that can be really helpful, to just focus on your positives. But it doesn't matter where you focus. If you are improving, if you are making strides in the right direction, it's all good. So, yeah.
I love that, because we always talk about, with early alert kind of things, that someone might say that's just academic. And our argument is always, that's impossible. It can't just be academic. There's a lot of other things that you've got to assess before you can do some really good engagement with the student. So I want to talk about this idea of high anxiety, because I think all of our listeners would say, Matt and I said this a couple of weeks ago, like even before COVID, we were seeing spikes in anxiety and depression, and then COVID happened, and then it was just like really crazy town. And I think we're seeing a little bit of decrease in that, but we're still not at levels that we were 20 years ago. So can you just talk about this idea of anxiety for college students? What does that look like? How does that manifest? What patterns do you see?
Yeah, anxiety is one of those things that looks the same for everybody and looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
It manifests differently, but it affects us the same way. It affects us just by bringing us down. And we don't operate at the same level, whether it's in regards to academically, emotionally, socially, relationally. When we have a lot of anxiety, then we're damped down. And so that's that's just sad because we're not functioning at the level that we could be. And when you're in college, that's kind of what you need most, is to be able to function at a high level in every one of those ways. Academically, it's, yes, important, but so is socially. It's very, very important to be able to make those great connections. And I think your question was, why is there more of it now than before? I do think that the pandemic was just huge.
Yeah.
The pandemic really was one of those things where they didn't have the social exposure. And so it depends on, where they fall, how old they are, what grade they're in, or what grade they were in. And so that is probably, I don't know if there will ever not be an effect from the pandemic for those of us who experienced it, all of us, right? However, that's not the only thing. I think, we've said it before, and I hate to harp on this. However, I think that social media is one of the absolute biggest things that draws kids emotions into that, it just puts them into spiraling, really. So that, and then I understand, I don't have kids in the college age anymore, but the parental pressures apparently are really, really high these days, higher than they've ever been. And that's not helpful. Right?
Yeah, sorry, I want to say, Matt and I were talking about this before we started, and we were saying, so you talk about anxiety, which I'm sure that I had when I was younger. We just didn't talk about it.
Oh, right.
We never said anything about it. It was just like, yeah, that's there.
Mhm.
And I would say also with my parents, I won't speak for anyone else's parents, but for my parents, they were doing a whole bunch of stuff and not paying attention to me, really. Right. So I didn't have pressure from them because I'm not sure that they really knew kind of what was going on with me. And so it's a really interesting thing where it's like you have more parental involvement, which is good because we're talking things through and we're naming them and right, all of that kind of stuff. But I think sometimes the outcome of that is like this so much focus on your kids that they feel burdened with that
performance anxiety. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know, like there's a balance in there somewhere, right? Where it's like, I want my parents to walk alongside of me, but I also don't want to feel okay, Rachel, well, it's up to you whether or not my life is happy based on whether or not you can do well in college, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, this isn't a parenting podcast, but it does seem like if we had more encouragement and to help our students or our children to move into the areas where they're wired and where they have their passions, it changes things a lot. But yeah, it's hard. It's just really hard. I think you also asked, like, how does it manifest? Avoidance is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
We just socially, don't engage. Don't ask questions in class. Skip class if you need to.
Yeah.
Stay in your dorm. Just hang out by yourself all the time. The isolation that comes with anxiety is devastating. Yeah. So physical symptoms, the heart racing, insomnia, sweaty palms. And then there's that hypervigilance piece where so many, the high achievers, they're just so intent on perfectionism, really, doing it all just right. And that's a recipe for catastrophe. That's a lot of stress.
Yeah, you don't want to try then, right? If it has to be perfect, then we're just not even gonna try. Matt, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I have a lot to say. Everything that you've said, Suzette, I'm looking at it through a lens of me as a child, me in college, me as a parent, me now, right? And and I was reflecting on, we were just talking in our class on Sunday about our kids being naturally good, like the goodness of our children, and seeing them as good. And one of the things that came out of that was talking about potential and how potential is typically from someone else's point of view. Like someone else says, I see this potential in you, because and that actually can be weaponized against our children.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you think about like your potential is you're gonna be an all-star soccer player, and they're like, but I don't love it. Yeah, I have, even if I have the talent to be, I don't love it. But nope, we're gonna do all-star, we're gonna club soccer you all over Texas, and we're gonna put 60,000 miles on the car this year because you're going to love it, right? And that's like projecting this. So I see that piece, and ultimately it just kind of lands for me on so what you're talking about is like giving your students an opportunity to give themselves grace and to feel grace. Like, yeah, okay. So the last thing, Rachel, that the last trip I took was the first time Aiden got a B in college, and then I think he actually got a C, which, if you know Aiden, like, what? Well, I won't tell you what class it was, but I kind of accepted it. Like, all right, that was a good move. But the right thing to do is for me to look at him and say, that didn't change his potential at all. It doesn't change the way I look at him. It actually, if anything, gives me a little bit more like, oh, he knows how to manage his life, and he made a choice. And he's good with that because of, he weighed his options there. All of that, like, as opposed to coming in and just hammering for a student to feel that pressure of like, the only way I can be successful or meet up to the potential is if I get all A's, that kind of thing. But whatever it is, whatever the expectation is that's being placed on them, right?
I think those grades also give parents a lot of insight into what their kid's doing, what they're thinking, how they're going to, live out their life and develop. But sometimes we don't see it that way.
Right.
Well, it's such a good conversation because, I was thinking, Matt, just this last week, all of the times where our student life practitioners are talking about how they still have to, and maybe more than before, educate parents. So if you have first generation students, if you have parents who aren't familiar with college, and sometimes even if you have parents who did college, but things are very different now, how often they're having to pull in parents to say, this is what we expect and this is what we need. And I think part of the conversation you have with parents is, what kind of parent does your kid need? You might have a kid that needs some like kick in the pants, like get it together, let's go. But you might have a kid where you're like, I'm proud of you for getting a B. That was a good choice. You were exhausted and you did the right thing there. And I know that doesn't come easily to you, and we don't have to make a habit out of it. But at the same time, there was some grace that you gave to yourself in that moment. So I like that idea of how can we use this to be able to educate parents. Okay, I'm getting depressed a little bit, so I'd like to move on to the solution.
Well, I think it's a really good setup of the challenge, right? And really the reason this is really relevant today is that whole conversation is what every single student on our campus is feeling, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, Suzette, I want you to tell us a little bit about this course, UNAFRAID. It's a 6-week course. So can you give us, first of all, let's just start with the format. Help us understand what that looks like.
Sure. Sorry, I had to put a cough drop in my mouth. I've been coughing. Forgive me. The course is divided up into 6 modules, and there's 5 lessons per module. So this can be done in 6 weeks, or it can be done over the course of, the whole entire school year. It could be done any way you want to do it, really. And it can be done with a peer group, with a cohort, or by yourself. And those 6 modules have the 5 lessons. And in those lessons, you've got a short video. I know those attention spans are really short, so they're short. And it comes with, if it's just a student that is registering for the course, it would have what we call a growth sheet. And in that growth sheet, you're going to have a summary of the lesson. Because a lot of times I think kids come back, they'll watch the video while they're, watch the video, probably listen, while they're riding their bike or whatever. and then come back and maybe look at that growth sheet. And so it's a summary, has some key points that are bullet pointed, and reflection questions for them to just chew on, and then action steps. And I try to be very intentional about helping them to just, find an action step that really resonates with them so that they're not feeling overwhelmed by all 4 that are suggested. But
Yeah.
I also know that it takes different kinds of questions or actions for us to find one that really does resonate with us. So that's the growth sheet. And in the there's the 5 lessons, but there's also an interview that is with every one of the lessons or modules, the 6 modules. So there's one extra interview, and those are everything from I think my favorite one is probably Andy Young, who I think Matt
Oh
knows,
yeah.
and he's a it's the hostage negotiator. He's a hostage negotiator. He actually uses a different term, I think, now. But he said, I said that to him, and he said, yeah, you can still say that. And I was like, okay. Yeah. And the reason that I interviewed him was simply because he is so good at helping people to change what they're thinking. So he's really got that down. Anyway, there's some really, really good interviews in there. One is a gal who grew up with a mother who was an alcoholic, and another one, I mean, it's such a normal thing these days, sadly. And then there's, and literally her mother passed away. She drank herself to death. And then there's several others that are really great, but I won't go into that. Basic format of the course is they log on. They've got 6 modules. They work through one at a time and hopefully do an action step and actually implement it before they move on to the next lesson. But you can really do it any way you want. I know some people will watch all the videos first and go back and then do each lesson individually with the growth sheet.
Interesting. Matt, did you have something you want to say about that, or can I?
Well, I was just going to say, Suzette, so having watched them and then actually put them into practice, it's kind of shocking. Really, it's just kind of shocking how taking that time, like we're going to be very intentional and do this action, and how you start to feel the difference, right? And so if you could build that into practice, what a change
right.
I felt. So.
Yeah. Yes. And so that's a great point. I didn't say this, but literally I walk with them through some different kinds of action steps. So putting heart-focused breathing, lots of people know about heart-focused breathing. It's a great breathing technique. It's one of the only really studied ones. I mean, all kinds of institutions, Kaiser, Harvard, all sorts of them have used heart-focused breathing with their staff. It works. That's the reason. But if you don't do it, it doesn't work, right? and so I walk with them in that process of actually implementing it. And so then we go into different thought strategies, and then I walk with them how to implement those. I take it smaller steps. So a lot of times in counseling or in coaching, things are thrown at you and they're great ideas and you need to go and implement them, but they're not in tiny little chunks. And so I've divided up into small chunks to make them really actionable. Yeah. So that it actually changes lives.
Yeah, I love that.
So I know you love that, Rachel.
I do. I love action items. So you have a lot of different pieces, and we're going to go a little bit long because there's a couple more things that I want to talk about. Make sure we fit all of this in. So you have some of your modules around heart-focused breathing. You have a module on lifestyle. You have one on coaching strategies. You have one on purpose. Which one of those do you want to tell us a little bit about? Which do you think is most relevant for this conversation?
Whew, that's hard.
Like choosing a child, right?
Well, maybe I'll stick with heart-focused breathing, simply because I don't think people understand in their mind Like I think, or in their, like, I don't know. It's like they don't really get it, that you have to calm your emotions
Yeah.
before your mind is fully functioning. Um, and so the heart focused breathing, it can help people from like walking into an interview to going into take a test to doing a podcast. Did I do heart focused breathing?
Oh,
Yes,
for
I
sure.
did. Yeah. So by calming our emotions with heart focused breathing, that changes when like I said, you can see the results on a biofeedback monitor. And when we can get in sync, in coherence, then we have the ability to think clearly so that we can actually look at how we are thinking in ways that bring us down. So how we're thinking thoughts that aren't true. You
Yeah.
know, when I think so often we get in a place where we think that what we're thinking is the truth. And the
Right.
truth is it's not.
Right.
There's a million other things we could think, but no.
Yeah, I really like the way that you've built
Mm.
this because I think there is a tendency to jump into this other content that you have, which is so important, which is about what is the meaning of your life and right. And how do you kind of have this lifestyle that's healthy? And you have all of those. But I think the foundational piece of you have to get your mind and your body in a place where you can think about it rationally, understand it, be really calm about it, so that then you can absorb and have kind of good thinking around those, I think is so important. And I was thinking, Suzette, about, so many campuses deal with students who are anxious and depressed, and they don't have enough counseling resources to be able to do one-on-one counseling with everyone.
Right.
So in a lot of cases, we see like they might have a calm room where if you're feeling stressed or you're feeling anxious, everybody goes in there and they have good music playing and it's like in the dark and you're settling down, which I think is really helpful because that's a way to say like, yeah, that's normal. Like people are going to be in here and it's fine. But I think giving them this really specific tool to be in tune with what's happening in their body and to settle down is such a good first step for them because it's tangible. Right. It's a thing that you can practice very specifically that then sets you up to be able to kind of absorb all of these other things. And, when you're talking about anxiety, I don't think that oftentimes students recognize what anxiety feels like. I think they think of it like I feel anxious, but the ability to recognize that in your body where your heart is beating fast and your hands are sweaty and you're having like you're kind of in an aroused state so that you can't be calm. I think it's just such an important tool to be able to teach students, whether that is in your first year seminar or that is individually where students are kind of going through and you're creating groups around that. I just love the idea of a very tangible, we have people all the time that say, how can I help students? And I think this is like a clear content driven way to say we're gonna put them in a state where then we can talk about some of the other things. I really
Yes, I think that's one of the reasons that I feel like this would be such a wonderful thing just to add to the onboarding process.
Yeah.
So every student takes it because they're all dealing with anxiety. And it would help all of them to realize, oh, these things in me, they are anxiety. But, they have to want to not have this anxiety, but the anxiety contagion is a real thing. It's a
Yeah,
place
for
to
sure.
belong. It's a place to belong. And so they've got to want to. But if they felt like they had a place to belong that wasn't with anxiety, but in confidence and resilience, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I really love that. It's interesting because you think a lot of times about how do we give our students self-agency, right? How do we teach them how to be able to learn? And I think this is a great first step. Matt, you want to say something
I
about
think
that?
it gives them shared language so they can use the same language. It gives them specific actions, right? But so I think that combination is really powerful for them. But the main thing, as you were talking about that, the two of you were talking about that, I was thinking about what a great way to reduce success debt, which as we think about how, a student comes on campus and the first thing that they miss that puts them behind or they feel behind and they start feeling anxious, this is a way to help them move out of their success debt. Here's a toolkit where you're not alone. And also here's where you can kind of, well, you guys talk about the rewiring of your brain, right? And
Oh
how
yeah.
this is a way that you can rewire your brain out of this continual kind of digging a hole or success
Mhm.
debt.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's Amy Edmondson who talks about writing yourself permission slips, maybe Brene Brown, where like you're going to something and you have a permission slip that's like, I'm allowed to have hard conversations, or I'm allowed to. And I think this is such a good precursor to that, right? That's like, settle down first,
Mhm.
face whatever is going to happen and say, I have permission to
Mhm.
feel stressed or be worried about this. But that comes from a place of choice instead of from a place of sort of
Out of
physical
control.
just being out of control and overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And so it's okay to feel stressed, but you want that to come from a place where it's useful to you, not where you just feel like, I don't know what to do. This is out of control, right?
Mhm.
So I really love that. Well, I think there's a lot more that we could talk about
Oh, yes.
because only scratched the surface. But I am really interested in thinking about, so if we have schools that are like, hey, I want to talk about, we've talked in the past about one student doing this being embedded like in orientation or in your first year program, counseling centers being able to use this like as a small group.
Mhm.
I think there's so many applications to this piece.
Mhm.
And I think it's a great precursor to other content that you are trying to deliver. So Matt, I'm thinking about like our first generation college students, our students who are taking developmental courses to get them ready for English 111, right? All academic recovery. I think it would be awesome for your students who are in academic recovery to be like, hey, it's okay. We're not only going to help you rise above this academically, we're going to give you tools to be able to kind of harness what is going on inside of you so that you can be successful. Anyway, I have a long list of ways that I think we could use this in higher education. How, were you going to say something, Matt?
Well, I was just going to say your summer bridge program, like we've talked about, where on your campus you have the transitioning from high school into your university, but they're conditionally admitted and they have to go through this process. This is great content for them to feel ready, right?
Yeah.
So, a lot of applications, Suzette. It's really good work.
Okay, I have one more thing to say about it, and then we've got to stop because we're going long, but it's just so good that I want to say one more thing. And that is that I think oftentimes we want to just dip into the content of a thing, or like we say in our student success funnel, you want to have a relationship with a student, but you don't have anything to connect with them on. So if I say to somebody, here are your 5 students, go and be friends with them, there's a certain kind of person who's like, I know how to do that, right? I know how to ask the right questions and listen and that sort of thing. But there's another kind of person that's like, I will go and be a resource for them, but I don't know when I take them to coffee, what do we talk about?
Right.
Or when I take them to lunch, what are the things that we should say? Well, I love the idea of saying one of the ways that you make this relationship is through this content, where every week when we meet for coffee, we're going to talk about what did you learn this week through this program.
Love that, Rachel. That's
great. It's a really nice way. We always talk about faculty who are like, I'll do it, but how? And to be like, here's how you do it. And you might learn something while you're at it as well. I think that's a great application too.
It's great for introverts and extroverts, right? Like this gives an introvert something to talk about.
For sure.
That's
okay. So if our schools are interested, I think we have some of your information here. You have a website that's about UNAFRAID, but you also have an email address where if they just want to talk to you or pick your brain or talk about like kind of what is all of that content, they could get connected with you. I assume you wouldn't be sad to hear from them.
I would love to hear from them.
So for those of you who are joining us just on podcast, the website is unafraidcourse.com. You can go and learn all about it there. And then if you want to just talk to Suzette about what's, how you could bring that to your school or how it would be helpful to students, it's connect at coaching for holy, WHOLLY living.com, connect at coachingforholyliving.com. And I see a lot of potential, and we may have to continue to have you on the program in the future so that we can move into some of your other great content that I think will be helpful. Matt, any closing words? Suzette, any closing words?
Thanks so much. Yeah, a lot of wisdom here, and I really appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. And I just wish the best for both of you.
Thank you. Good to spend time with you. Thank you guys for joining us. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.